Hey, I want to welcome you back. As always, I appreciate you tuning back in and checking out my videos. Today is Honda Day. Picked up this, I don't even know what it is. You're so confused with all these bikes. This is a 2004 CRF250R. And man, I guess so many projects going on right now, but the story with this one is the owner had a hard time getting it to start. He took it down, had the valve shimmed, and it was great. It worked great for about 2 months. And one day he was just climbing a hill and it just brrr and shut off. Didn't hear that lock-in sound, so that's great. And I did push the kicker down and it's not locked up. Today's episode is going to be ripping into this thing and figuring out why she shut down on him. Stay tuned. Alright, so let's take a quick walk around this bike and see the goods and the bads and come up with a game plan on what we need to do. So the front tire is not terrible. The brake hose is incorrectly routed or routed behind the plate. It should be in front of the plate. Kill switch is in the correct place. Chain is way too tight. Back tire's seen better days. Rear brakes look pretty good. The line support is missing. The caliper, all the boots are gone out of that, so we're more than likely going to have to do something with a caliper rebuild kit for the rear. Brakes feel fine. This thing feels like it's got a ton of compression. Front brakes feel good. Throttle's a little draggy. She's got coolant in her. The meter says 171 hours. Smells like gasoline with a touch of ethanol. Alright, so first things first, let's give it a couple of kicks and see if she actually will start up. So honestly, this thing feels like it's got too much compression for a 250. It's hard to kick through. Like the auto decomp's not working properly or something like that. But it does have compression and it is rolling over. Go ahead and pause this video. Go down in your comments and tell me what your next step would be on a bike like this. Or what would be your first step as far as diagnostics. At any rate, we're going to have to get into this top end, getting the valve cover off and doing some checks in there. So first step for me is going to be getting the back end of the bike off and getting the tank off so I have access to the top of the engine. So as it turns out here, first thing I'm going to check for is ignition. I want to make sure I've got spark. So I can't get a socket on the plug. There's some kind of weird piece of rubber or something on the side of the plug here. I got to try to fish out. It's missing the upper motor mount. I'm just noticing. Don't need that anyway, really. Well, so we have spark. All right, let's get this valve cover off and see what we got on the top end here. Oh, that does not look good. This camshaft is wiped out. Looks like the shims have fallen out of it. She is a mess. All right, let's get this thing up on top dead center and get this chain off and get this cam out. So there's a mark in there on the crankshaft primary gear, and there's also a mark on the case. You want to line those up. If it won't let you line them up, you're probably not on top dead center on the compression stroke. So just make one more full revolution. All right, let's get this exhaust rocker out. I'm hoping that the valves and everything are going to be okay on this thing. It's a little port on the side of the engine. Once you take these two bolts out, you can use one of them to go in and thread into the rocker shaft and slide that out. And we can pull out our exhaust rocker. So yeah, I wiped out the camshaft. And one of the lifters is broken. If these openings were in decent shape, I would go ahead and do a cylinder leak down test just to make sure that the valves are not bent or any damage occurred to any of that stuff. But those are just too loose in this head. And this head's just done. It's gonna have to come off. Looks like the valves probably hit the piston. Just a smidge. The cylinder bore looks like it's in pretty good shape. Let's go take a look at this cylinder head. Oh, what a shame. The head is in good shape nonetheless, but it's just not usable. These things are wallowed out just too bad. So we're going to be looking for a head for this, probably complete, because we're going to need this exhaust rocker, and of course our camshaft is destroyed. On the positive note, it looks like the bottom end's in really good shape on this, and the rest of the bike is in fairly good condition. So let me do some research, find out what I can get and where I can find some parts for this thing, and we'll go from there. I picked up this used cylinder head assembly complete. It's a little bit pricey, but man, I'll tell you, I was pretty shocked. This thing looks like almost like new. And this is going to save me a lot of time. It'll be a direct bolt on. We'll just go ahead and measure the shims, make sure it's shimmed properly, and then we can get it back on our engine. Before I go installing this new head, I just want to make sure 100% that the reason this head didn't fail is because the oil pump's not pumping. Don't lose this spring that's on this filter. Easy to do. Of course, we're going to change the oil on this, but I just want to make sure that the pump is pumping oil up into the oil filter housing. That seems to be working fine. All right, before I do any measurements, since I just got this, I don't know if these are torqued properly, so we're going to torque these to 144 inch-pounds, 12 foot-pounds. Okay, now we can go ahead and get a measurement, and they're looking for 0.9 to 0.15 millimeter on the intake side. So let's try that first. Line up your timing marks. And this one here, 0.13, just barely goes through, falls through on the other one. Let's go up to maximum. Does not go through there, just barely drags through there. Let's go up one more, see if we need to shim this at all. If the 0.18 millimeter goes through, we're going to have to do some shim work on that one. It does not, so we're okay there. Our exhaust is going to be 0.25 to 0.31 millimeter. So we'll start with the smaller side. And where we're going to shim, we're going to check that is going to be right between the rocker arm and the valve itself. The 0.25 goes through, so it's the same thing. And let's go up to 0.30, which is going to be the top of the range on this. Oh, that's tight. Doesn't want to go in. It goes through there. So let's see if 0.33 goes through, which is the next size that I have. And if it does, then we'll have to do shimming on this one. Oh, that's too tight. So we're good. Yep, we're good. All right, now that she's all disassembled, let me go ahead and get this cylinder prepped for this head. So I got 2 intake boots on here. That doesn't work. Much better. I'll torque these head bolts in stages in a cross pattern up to 29 foot-pounds. So we'll go 10, 20, 29. Let's get our engine back up on top dead center. Just drop a screwdriver down. You can either use your kicker, or I can use the chain to kind of roll it. So you can see the screwdriver goes up, down, up, down. We want to find the very top of its travel. And when you get there, just double check on the side of your case to make sure that that notch is lined up. The camshaft has timing marks on it. These are going to line right up with the top of the head. And this will only go in one way. If you try to put it backwards, there'll be no way to get it to go in because the cam lobes will be pushing down on the lifters. So while maintaining your crankshaft top dead center timing mark, either on the other side or through your magneto cover, what you want to do is be sure that your chain is taut on the front side. So if you see the timing marks, there's one here and one here, and they are lined up with the head. So if you have the chain loose along the front, it might look like this mark is off and you might change it. So you want to make sure that the camshaft is rotated clockwise just until this chain is tight in the front, and check your marks. And again, verify that you're on top dead center. If that's the case, we can go ahead and put our cam caps back on. So take a close look at your cam caps before you put them back on. One says L, one says R for left and right, obviously, and they both say in, so towards the intake side. The reason being is one of these has an oil port that has to match up with the head. Keep in mind you have these little half moon clips. You want to get those on the camshaft correctly. Try to be careful not to drop this thing down inside of your timing chain well. You'll be fishing off the stator and magneto to dig it out. You can drop the 2 shorter bolts in the back. Don't put the front ones in yet because you have to line this pin up with the exhaust cam rocker. Obviously be cautious that you don't knock the shims out. And get those retorqued. Make sure everything still moves freely, like Ace. Some of y'all might not get that. I'm not going to be shy about getting some oil in here. Now to retract our tensioner here, we just got to take this back bolt off and a small slotted screwdriver go in there. We're just going to turn it. It's under some spring tension. Just keep tightening it, tightening it, tightening it till it pulls all the way. And sometimes they'll lock back, but if it does not hold back, you need one of these little T-tools, which comes with a new tensioner. I usually save them. If you don't have it, you're going to have to hold this back with your screwdriver and try to fish this in.
Now that everything's tight, let's give our engine a couple of rotations, make sure there's nothing binding. Reline the timing marks and then recheck our timing mark on the crankshaft as well. Make sure nothing moved. If you can't get your valve cover gasket to stay in, it just keeps falling out. Dielectric grease, not silicone. Just put a bunch of dabs around and that will hold this in. I've got liquids in all the orifices that require it. Let's kick this engine a few times and pump some of this nasty oil out of here until we get some fresh stuff coming up. Now we're going to rid this fuel system of the evil ethanol molecules for which I'm sure it contains. That's enough. Just have to take this thing back apart. All right, let's give it the old. Stinks. All right, well, it started. Back in. Let's get that on so we can hear if this engine's knocking. I'll tell you what the worst part of doing any of these bikes is trying to get this air filter boot on the back of the carburetor. Stupid. Sounds like it's running lean. I think we're gonna have to pull this carburetor off and go through it. All right, I got the carb off. Let's go through this thing real quick just to make sure everything's okay. This is not going to be an in-depth rebuild on an FCR carburetor. I actually have a video on that. I'll put a link to that somewhere up at the top of the screen. Not bad, not terribly dirty. $160 for a main. I want to say that that's probably going to be too small. Let's take a look at our pilot jet here. We got a 42 on the pilot, 160 on the main. And we are on the 1, 2, 3, 4th notch down, which is richening this mixture. Oh, all right, the gasket is there. However, this slide is very loose in here. She does rattle around when the thing runs a little bit. What I'm going to do is separate the mid body from this and take a look at all those seals. On these FCRs, Honda likes to put the screws on the outside. A lot of the other ones, the screws will be in the 4 corners on the inside of the bowl. these aren't all dried up. Looks like somebody may have been in here already, but this thing is full of dirt in here. Like it's like gritty. That's not good. Certainly wasn't holding the dirt out. Yeah, these things are usually hard as a rock and dried up, and they're soft, so somebody's been in here. It's just nasty. All right, we're going to take all this stuff over, clean it up real good at the parts washer. Take a look at our accelerator pump diaphragm. It's pretty nasty in there too. We'll clean all that up. Looks like somebody over tightened this cover as well, and what that can do sometimes is it moves the bottom of this up a little bit, and it can block your main jet. These things don't need to be cranked down, they just need to be lightly tightened, just a scooch. I'm not sure I can repair that. Problem is, once they get pushed too far, you try to move them back, the aluminum will snap, and that's what it's doing here. You can see this side's kind of raised up, and this side where I hit it is back to flat where it's supposed to be, but it's cracked and it will leak right there. So this jet access cover will need to be replaced. So it looks like the stock jetting on this is 160 for the main and 40 for the pilot, which seems kind of low to me, but it is what it is. And we're going to up that to a 162 main and a 42. Well, our pilot's a 42, so we're going to go ahead and keep that 42 in there, just clean it. And our clip is incorrect. Our clip should be on the 3rd notch. 4th notch is stock, so we're going to just lean it out just a touch. So just a little quick tip I want to point out on the Honda FCR, which is uncommon to the other manufacturers, is your throttle valve and your throttle valve plate on the Honda can basically go either direction. This is a throttle valve from a YZ250F FCR, and you notice up in the upper corners here they have these little blocker plates, so they can only go one direction. It won't fit the other direction. So for whatever reason, Honda doesn't do that. So when you go to put this throttle valve back together, it can go that way, or it can go that way. The problem you're going to have is if you put this in incorrectly or upside down, this thing just will not idle properly. It will not run right at low speed whatsoever. This should run just fine wide open. So a quick way to tell on these is just look at this throttle valve plate as an arrow facing up, and that's how it should go on your throttle valve. I've got my carburetor all rebuilt, back in the machine, bolted up. Now before we go ahead and start this again, I just want to touch base on something. In my 2008 RM250 rebuild video, I did a light hone on the cylinder, and one of my users kind of called me out on not cleaning the cylinder afterwards. I did respond to him, let them know that I did clean the cylinder afterwards. However, I did not film that part of it. When you use a hone, you should absolutely 100% clean your cylinder afterwards with a cylinder cleaning brush. I use like a 25% to 75% mixture of simple green and water. This goes in a drill and it cleans all of the fine particulate that may be in the cylinder. With the aluminum oxide, there's generally no abrasive that will stay stuck in your Nickel coating, and you'll be fine, but definitely want to wash them out real good. Also, I just want to be real with you guys. So my channel is basically for entertainment purposes only. It's not necessarily meant to be educational. I'm just bringing you along on the journey when I buy these bikes and what I go through. So on a lot of these videos, I'm not going to 100% show you step by step how to do everything. If I can, I'll throw in a little tidbit here and there that might help you out in your builds, unless it's something specific that I'm showing you how to do it. But every manufacturer and every part of the engine is going to be different depending on what model and what year. I can't cover everything in one video. This is where your service manual is going to be a huge help for you, and I always recommend getting them because torque specs and adjustments and everything are going to be specific to each bike. So I just kind of wanted to touch on that comment a little bit. I guess it got to me just a touch that maybe I should explain that there's other things that need to be done along with this, but I'm hoping this will clear some of that up. If you need a manual, I'll put a link down in the description. If you use that link in my discount code RestoroosterOHV, you get 22% off. Already great price on your service manual. They're PDF manuals. They're downloadable to your computer. Keep them on your phone so you'll have them. And that discount is good until like August 31st, 2024. So that's as far as I'm going to go with that. I thank you for your understanding. And now let's get back to the fun stuff. Definitely sounds much better. Before we do any tuning, let's get the back end back on. Now that we get this engine running pretty good, pending the test ride, let's jump into this rear brake caliper and get that sorted. The easiest way to get these pistons out is with compressed air. Do not get your fingers in here. Kit comes with your seals, your rubber guides, some new crush washers, leader screw cap, and a new pin to hold your pads. The original pins, caliper, and piston, go ahead and clean them up real good with brake clean or parts washer. Then once you get your housing cleaned up for the most part, I want to take a look inside your bore, and we're looking at the piston seal grooves. If you got old brake fluid that's been sitting in there for a while, brake fluid, like ethanol fuel, is hydrophilic. It attracts water, and what will happen is you get some corrosion in the aluminum. A lot of time, if it is corroded, you can just get in there with a little flathead screwdriver or something and kind of scrape out most of it. I mean, if it's corroded to the point where it's no good, obviously it's no good, but clean it out and we can get our new square cut O-rings in there. We have a larger one and a smaller one. Larger one's going to go on the inside, and that is basically for the seal. And then you have the outer one, the littler one, and that's going to be a dust boot or a dust seal. These can be kind of tricky. As you can see, the seal looks like it's bigger than the bore, but it sits in that groove. So a little bit of tricky working it in there. Now, one thing you want to look at, I hope you can see that, is that seal is twisted. You want to make sure it's not like that. It's completely square all the way around. And the same thing with your other seal. That piston should slide nice and free. These can sometimes be a little tricky to get through, but just be patient, work them in. This seal is going to go down on our bracket. And just make sure we lubricate our pins so everything slides freely. Now this one is missing the retainer clips or the anti-rattle clips on both the bracket and the caliper, so I have to order those, but that's basically it. Go back together in the reverse order that you took it apart. Feels like she's a little bit lean on the top end here for sure. There you have it. That's going to do it for this Honda build. I ended up having to jump up to a 170 main jet. The later models call for a 170. I'm not 100% sure why 04 calls for a 160, but it is just way too small. Crank this thing wide open, she just goes instantly lean. Jet's too small, not letting enough fuel in. That's why you hear that whoa, that bog. So if it was more of a breaking up, sputtering, we'd be too rich. We put the 170 in there. She's good. She pulls hard right through the RPM range now. But as always, I want to thank all of you for your support. It means a lot to me. I really appreciate it. If you haven't subscribed already, please consider doing so. It doesn't cost you anything. The thumbs up, the comments, they all help with that algorithm and show my video to other people. Also, just a reminder, if you need a service manual, I'll put that link down in the bottom. Get yourself one. A lot of complicated stuff here. You want to make sure you got all the knowledges when you're doing your build. Thanks again for watching, and we will see you on the next one.